Time for Chapter 9 of Sputnik's Guide to Life on Earth by Frank Cottrell-Boyce, with illustrations by Stephen Lenton, and thank you, Macmillan Children's Books, for letting me read. Chapter 9 is Chicken and Mushroom Pie, which comes from that list in the beginning of the book. Do you remember? Every chapter is actually the name of one of the items on that list that Prez made. And if you think that so far the story has been a little bit peculiar or odd, we're getting full on into the realms of weird, wild bonkers with this next part of the story. So Sputnik really needs a wee. That's where we left it. And he's just found out about Hadrian's Wall, of its existence.
An 80-mile wall?
Said Sputnik as we walked into the farmyard.
It makes you think.
In primary year 5, Mrs. Audley had asked us to think about the wall. Consider, she had said, how brilliant the Roman engineers must have been to build something so big and strong without machinery all those centuries ago. Think, she said, about the moonlight flashing on the swords and spears of the Roman legion. Think about the blue paint on the bodies of the furious Picts. I knew Sputnik was not thinking about any of this. I knew exactly what Sputnik was thinking about.
An 80-mile wall? Oh,
he sighed.
You could pee a long good message on a wall like that. You could pee a chuffing novel on a wall like that.
Do you remember in a few chapters before, he had tried to leave Prez a message by peeing, because that's how dogs communicate with each other, and he thought everyone on the planet Earth communicated in pee, like dogs. It's a long way off. Can you hold on till we get there?
We've got transport, look!
The little digger that the dad had been using to clear the farmyard was still out. The keys were even still in the ignition. No, we're not going joyriding. Besides, this thing only goes about 2 miles an hour.
Have you read the instructions?
No, I haven't read the instructions.
So how do you know how fast it can go? Let's take a look.
Prez walked once around the digger, then reached into his backpack and pulled out a massive hammer. Clang! He whacked the undercarriage of the digger. No! Sputnik, please! They need this for the farm. You can't. Clang! He whacked the other side. The digger rocked on its suspension.
Get in,
said Sputnik. No.
I'm not used to driving in this kind of gravity,
he said, ducking underneath the scoop.
I think I should be under supervision. That means you.
I jumped at the sound of a drill whistling somewhere in the scoop. Drrr. Please stop messing about, Sputnik.
Who's messing? I'm totally re-engineering this vehicle for the benefit of mankind.
He bounced into the cabin, pulled a few levers, and brought the scoop straight down in front of us. So that's the bit that scoops out the earth that goes at the front of the digger. It looked less like an elephant's trunk now and more like a rocket. From somewhere in his backpack, he pulled out a circular saw and carved the front of the digger into a point.
Nice job, Sputnik,
said Sputnik.
Okay, let's start her up.
And he turned the key in the ignition. Sputnik has often tried to explain what happened next. It's all to do with physics. As you approach the speed of light, your body begins to lose mass or gain mass or something like that. Anyway, you sort of stop being exactly solid, which means you can slice through traffic without bumping into it. Actually, I've just got to show you the picture here. So this is a picture of the digger with Prez and Sputnik and the digger front that's been carved into a point. That's what they're driving. And going at the speed of light, which is kind of physically impossible. Which means you can slice through the traffic without bumping into it. Oh, whatever. Just after he turned the ignition, the digger approached the speed of light. Less than a second later, we were veering off a long straight road into a car park 50 miles from Stramoddy Farm. My stomach, though, was still back in the farmyard. So they'd kind of gone, and a pair of buzzards circled overhead. There was a smell of wet sheep, peat, coffee, and cake.
See? I was even starting to note.
Oh no, sorry, that's not Princess voice. We always do this. See, I was even starting to notice the things that Sputnik noticed. Oh, I see. So he's noticing the smells, which is something that Sputnik does, and Prez is saying he's starting to do that. So there was a smell of wet sheep, peat, coffee, and cake. See, I was even starting to notice the things that Sputnik noticed. There was a sign pointing to a building with "Visitor Information and Toilets" written on it. Behind the building, a grassy bank ran across the top of the field. It had bits of wall sticking out of it. There were huge chunks of stone scattered all over the field. I'd never been here before, but I knew where we were. This grassy bank was Hadrian'S earthwork. Those chunks of stone were the remains of Hadrian's wall. A low, furious mutter came from Sputnik.
Huh, well, where's the wall? That is the famous wall? Are you calling that a wall? Ha! That is not a wall. That is rubble. What's wrong with you people? You had a lovely long wall with nice big stones and you let it fall down. Where's it all gone?
I knew where it had all gone. We did Hadrian's Wall with Mrs. Audley in primary year 5. Over the centuries, farmers used stone from the wall to build barns and cottages and sheep pens.
Oh, did they? Growled Sputnik. Oh, very did they. Well, they can just chuffing well put them back.
I should have worried when he said that. I should have worried even more when he lowered the digger arm and drove over the car park, through the little wooden fence and up the hill towards the wall itself. So he's now destroying stuff. A lady in Roman clothes came out of the visitor centre, waving her arms in the air. At first I thought we'd time travelled or that she was a ghost, but she turned out just to be a guide in fancy dress. No, you can't bring that vehicle onto the site. The site is very fragile. This is an ancient monument. No diggers are... No! The digger's spike teeth and wide black mouth were bearing down on the lady as though it was going to eat her. Sputnik was out at the controls. No! She jumped out of the way. Sputnik scooped up a load of boulders from the field and then headed towards the ruins of the wall. What do you think you're playing at? Screamed the Roman lady. She was looking at me. What, she yelled, is going on? That was a tough question for me, because the truth is I had no idea what was going on. I had no idea even how we'd even got there. Turn that engine off now. This wall is 2,000 years old. It must be treated with respect.
We are going to treat it with respect, all right, said Sputnik. We're going to mend it.
She was still looking at me. She couldn't hear Sputnik, though he kept on talking.
I'm Sputnik Mellows, the Sputnik Mellows. This is a school project. My friend here was asked to imagine what Hadrian's Wall might look like to Hadrian. I can tell you, said Sputnik, he most certainly did not imagine it looking like this mess. So we're fixing it.
A man in a yellow hard hat and big boots and a high-vis jacket came strolling out of the visitors' toilets. Excuse me, the Roman lady shouted at him. Do you know anything about this? There is a digger on the site. Oh, no idea, said the man in the hard hat. I'm maintenance, so if anyone knew anything, it would... I'm maintenance, so if anyone knew anything, it would be me. Responsibility for upkeep rests with the Department of Ancient Monuments, not with a schoolboy in a digger.
Upkeep?
Howled Sputnik.
Well, you haven't upkept it very well so far.
As far as I'm concerned, continued the man in the hard hat. Sorry. As far as we're concerned, continued the man in the hard hat, you're a vandal. Get off the site right now, or legal proceedings will proceed.
Prez, snarled Sputnik. Is Hadrian's Wall important?
Of course it's important.
Then why are these people leaving it lying around in bits on the ground? Either the wall is important, so they should fix it, or it's not important, so they should get rid of all these stones and have a nice field instead.
He's got a certain logic, hasn't he, Sputnik? I mean, it's interesting to see the world from his point of view. The Roman lady screamed, "Ah!" as the digger scooped up a load of stones, trundled up to the top of the bank and dumped them next to the wall. She screamed even more when it happened again, "Ah!" and again until every stone in the field was piled at the top of the earthwork. He turned the engine off. I could hear the Roman lady talking to the police on the phone. No, not just any wall, the wall, Hadrian's Wall, the Roman Wall, the Vallium Aelium, our greatest national monument. Sputnik bounced out of the cabin, skimmed across the field, and sat up looking at her. I assumed she was going to do some kind of citizen's arrest on him there and then. Instead, she smiled and said, "Where did you come from? Aren't you lovely?" and ruffled his hair. She saw me walking towards her and snapped, "Be warned, young man. The police have been informed. You are in deep, deep water." Sputnik handed her something that looked like a small pineapple. "Oh," she called, "is this for me?" How could she be cooing at him, the actual culprit, while threatening me with arrest? There is no justice. She felt the weight of the pineapple thing in her hand. Sputnik was giving her that big wet eyes look, because obviously she sees him as a dog, remember? It looked weird on a wee alien with goggles, but I suppose it looked cute if you thought he was a dog. "I know," she cooed. "I know what you want." She hurled the pineapple high in the air. It arced across the pile of stones.
"Good shot!"
shouted Sputnik. "Fetch! Go on, boy, fetch!"
"Fetch?"
said Sputnik.
"Are you nuts? That's a live hand grenade."
When you say live hand grenade...
When I say live hand grenade...
What did you give her a hand grenade for?
Oh, we can discuss this later. For now, get your goggles on.
I haven't got any goggles. I'm going to be killed. We're all going to be killed. You said you were to look after me. Now you're chucking live grenades around in my vicinity.
Cover your ears. Get your head down. 5, 4, 3, duck!
I threw myself on the ground and covered my ears. But I did it so quickly that the Roman lady and the yellow hat man did the same. Even with our ears covered, the noise was deafening. First came a thunderous sucking, as though a vast invisible cleaner was vacuuming the grass, and then a terrible patter of pops, like a massive hedgehog rolling around on bubble wrap. Well, there's an image for you. A hedgehog with all its spikes on bubble wrap. That would be, but super loud, like popping. And then a whoosh as something flew past my shoulder, so close, so fast, I had to look up. The grass was boiling like soup. Lumps and heaps appeared in it. They sprang up and then they burst open. Rocks and stones erupted from under the soil as if pulled out by some giant hoover. In computer games, when there's an explosion, all the pieces fly away from each other. This was an explosion, but a backwards explosion. Instead of everything flying away from each other, all the rocks were flying towards each other.
Reverse dynamite, said Sputnik. That stuff is literally the bomb. Just watch.
With my hands over my face, peeping through the gaps in my fingers, like that, I watched rocks, stones, bricks, lintels flock together and swirl through the air. One by one, they settled on the ruins of the Roman wall. They piled up on top of each other, shuffled along the wall, made space for each other, twisted into place. Dust billowed. The stones and rocks ground against each other. They clicked. Then everything was still. So it's like the whole world, all the stones have gone, everything's come in and moved around and perfectly formed again. We could hear the buzzards calling again. Sputnik shoved his goggles back on top of his head and put his hands on his hips.
Lady, he said, Hadrian's wall, as Hadrian meant it to be.
A perfect, brand new Roman wall stretched across the top of the field, away over the hill. For a moment, none of us said a word. Then the man in the high-vis jacket took his hard hat off and held it to his chest. That, he said, is a fine piece of work. Beautiful, sighed the Roman lady. She sniffed and dabbed her nose with a bit of the toga. The Valum Hadriani. Then, of course, Sputnik went and peed on it.
Got to sign my masterpiece, he grinned.
When he'd finished, we all strolled along in the shadow of the ramparts for a while. The man in the hard hat kept touching the stones, saying, Tidy bit of limestone. Looks good as new. Great piece of work. My name's Pavel, by the way. Actually, no, said the Roman lady. When it was new, the mile castles at this end were originally made of turf and wood, whereas the mile castle over there is... Oh my, she stopped. A mile castle! Come on, let's go inside. A little way ahead, there was a stone tower sticking out of the wall with a pointy wooden roof and a kind of balcony. The Roman lady ran ahead and pulled at the door. It's open, she whooped. Come on. I'm Amelia, by the way. We followed her up the wide, clean steps to the top of the tower and looked out. That's when we saw it properly for the first time. The wall. It snaked away from us, over the hilltops, in and out of valleys, into the blue distance. A tower rose up from the top of the next hill, as though the wall was sitting up and taking a look around. Oh, now that's going to create a bit of awkwardness, said Pavel, who was looking behind us to where the new wall went straight across the main road. The next mile castle stood just exactly where the central reservation had been. Looks as if you've closed the A7. Oh, but it was worth it, sighed Amelia. A line of stopped cars stretched back along the road. Some of the drivers were turning around to go back the other way. Others were getting out of their cars to take a look at the wall. So he's rebuilt Hadrian's Wall over our new motorways and roads. So it's kind of suddenly just blocked all the roads. They patted the stones and walked up and down as if they couldn't believe it was really there. Have to say, said Pavel, in that toga, with the wall and sunset and everything, you look every inch the Roman... Oh, Roman! What? Ruin? She giggled. Goddess, he muttered, and then looked away, so they could each do their own private blush. He said, I suppose we'll be in endless trouble for disrupting the traffic. Trouble? Of course we'll be in trouble.
Trouble?
Sputnik laughed.
Ha ha ha! For fixing Hadrian's wall? The nation will be insanely grateful. And anyway, if a huge fortification appeared out of nowhere, reaching from one side of the country to the other, who would think of blaming it on one boy and his dog?
He was right. People from the stuck cars strolled past us, gazing out over the fields and up the battlements like dreamers. More of them came. They left their cars in the road and climbed up to up on the inexplicable wall. As the traffic jam got longer, people started to stroll across the fields towards the wall. Men from the roadworks in their yellow hard hats, families heading back from school with their kids in bright summer clothes, men and women on their way back from work, filming it all on their tablets and phones. The passengers from a big coach, a group of girls in tracksuits, looking down at them all. We felt like Roman legionaries surveying the attacking hordes. Sputnik, you've caused a massive obstruction. You've built a wall across the main road.
I didn't build it. It's been there for thousands of years.
It's not been there for the last few hundred years.
It was interrupted. Now it's gone back to normal, that's all.
Pavel and Amelia were worried about the same thing as me. Oh, a lot of people, said Pavel, are going to be very put out about this obstruction. You're not suggesting that we knock it down? Lovely bit of work like this. I could bring myself to scratch it. I couldn't bring myself to scratch it. Never mind knock it down. Sometimes an obstruction can be a nice thing, said Amelia. You're going along in life and then something happens to make you stop and think and everything looks lovely, although it is getting a bit chilly. She was only wearing a toga. Pavel took off his jacket off and draped it around her shoulders. Next thing I knew, they were holding hands. We should be getting back to Stramodi. The dad will be wondering where his digger is.
If you like,
said Sputnik. But somehow we couldn't leave. We carried on walking. Everyone carried on walking. The wall seemed to want us to walk on it the way music wants you to listen to it. We walked until the light began to fade, and then a star appeared. Just one, quite low in the sky, but very bright. If you looked closer, you could see that it was shimmering different colours. Everyone stopped to look at it, as though it was a light coming in on a window far away, calling them home. I knew what it was. Sirius, the dog star. Sailors use it because it's nearly always the first star to come out.
I'm not looking at Sirius, said Sputnik. I'm looking at the tiny white star just next to it.
I looked hard, but I couldn't see a tiny white star.
One good thing about being a dog is their eyesight. It's a lot sharper than humans.
At night time, anyway. Oh, no.
At night time, anyway. There's a little white star there. It's called the pup. Look at it. Look it up sometime. It had a...
oh, no. Sorry. I'm getting muddled up with my voices again. So that's Prez's voice. So Sputnik has said that about the eyesight. And then Prez says, at night time anyway, there's a little white star there. It's called the pup. Look it up sometime. It had a lovely little solar system. All the time I kept looking where Sputnik was pointing. After a while, I could just make out a tiny white star. And after a while longer, I think I could nearly see its planets swinging around it like sparks. And just to say, you guys, you can look that up on the internet afterwards about the stars, about Sirius and the little star next to it. So that's where Frank Cottrell-Boyce is so clever. He mixes in kind of real stuff about the cosmos and the planet Earth and history, but with this incredible, fantastical stuff about moving at the speed of time or restoring Hadrian's Wall. So the real and the unreal.
My planet used to be the third one along.
Used to be.
Yeah, the pup imploded, became a white dwarf. All its planets were sucked into it. And now the whole solar system's not much bigger than a tennis ball.
But how come we can see it if it's not there anymore?
You're seeing the light from the star. It's taken 500,000 years for the light to reach here because it's 500,000 light years away. So when you look at that star, you're looking into the past. 500,000 years into the past. A lot has happened since then. Now there's just an empty space where my home used to be. I've got nowhere to call my own in the whole of space. Imagine if every one of those stars was a party you're not invited to. Imagine everyone was a door that wouldn't let you in.
So just to say this is true, also when you look at stars, you are looking back at time because it takes, so the stars are so far away and the time it takes for the light to reach you, it's like you're looking at something that's a million years old. Crazy. I remember the day they took Grandad away. The woman from the temporary helped me pack my stuff and took me off in her car. In the rear-view mirror, I saw the policewoman shut the door to Grandad's flat. I haven't been back there since. Don't you miss it? Home?
Of course I do. Okay, maybe it wasn't the biggest planet in the universe, but it wasn't the smallest either. Had a lot of moons. It was nice to watch them following each other across the sky at night. It was, home.
It was bad enough having to leave the flat in Tregear Gardens. I can't imagine what it would be like to have to leave your whole solar system.
See? Even planets don't last forever.
If we save the Earth, maybe you could stay here. Maybe you could live here with me.
I don't know.
But we are going to save this one. But we are going to save this one. Hadrian's Wall, that's got to be worth seeing. That is surely going to be in the Companion. I felt we were beginning to save the planet.
I don't think so.
But you loved it. You weed a message on it.
Yeah, but it also fell down. Imagine if someone came all the way across the universe to see the wall just because you'd read about it in The Companion, and when you got there, there was nothing but a heap of rubble. What would people think? They'd think Sputnik's guide was an unreliable source and that Sputnik is not, and Sputnik is not unreliable.
We climbed back into the digger, turned the key in the ignition, and one blink later, we lurched to a halt in the farmyard. Yes, because they're travelling at faster than the speed of light, or at the speed of light. The front door was open. We could smell the chicken and mushroom pie. And by the way, it tasted raw, even if it was the result of an armed robbery. Oh yes, do you remember? Because before that, Sputnik had purchased the ingredients for the chicken pie by pulling a gun on the person in the caravan site shop or something like that. Oh my goodness. Well, that's the end of chapter 9. So they have rebuilt Hadrian's Wall. What's going to happen with that? Who knows? Does it stay up? Will all the roads to Scotland be blocked by Hadrian's Wall? We found out that Sputnik has also lost his home, same as Prez, who's lost he's lost his grandfather and the place they lived together that they called home. Can't wait for chapter 10. Bye.